Hi, my name's David Zimmel. I'm happy to be here to shoot another episode of Shades of Havana. We're in downtown Asbury Park, supposedly the house that Bruce Springsteen built. We're at Asbury Park Cigar and Tobacco. I have my panel here, Pranoy Mohapatra, Nick Foster, co-owner, and also owner of Senor Juan Cigar in Belmar, and my dear friend Steve Schultz. So I am smoking today an EP Carrillo, which Nick tells me in 2020 was the #1 cigar. So far it's got a very nice taste, and I'm very pleased. So why don't we all introduce ourselves? Tell me what you're smoking. Pranoy, why don't you start off by telling us what you're smoking?
So this is a Flor de las Antillas. It was the 2013 Cigar of the Year. Nice. I'm the owner of PM Tutoring LLC. It's an SAT prep predominantly company, although we help with all high school subjects. I have a background in healthcare and healthcare management as well, but really leaned into PM Tutoring around 2018 or so.
How's it going, guys? I'm Nick Foster. I'm co-owner of Asbury Park Cigar and Tobacco, owner of Senor Juan Cigars over in Belmar. Great to be here. I spent 20 years in corporate marketing before I got into cigars. I still do a little marketing consulting as well. And I'm, just thrilled to have Shades of Havana here in our lounge here in Asbury Park at Asbury Park Cigar and Tobacco.
Hi, I'm Stephen Schultz. I'm in commercial real estate pretty much my whole life. Born and raised in Ocean Township, right near Asbury Park. So I have a deep history here in Asbury Park. So I'm honored to be here with Shades of Havana to discuss Asbury Park. I'm smoking a San Cristobal Elegante. I'm usually smoking cigars on the golf course, but I'm going to enjoy one today. And I'm really honored to be here today. Thank you.
So I would like to start off by talking about the growth of Asbury Park. Asbury Park has got long, rich history dating back into the 30s, 40s, 50s. As Stephen is in real estate, I'm also in real estate my whole life. And I've seen the progression of the buildup of Asbury. It's really been an amazing thing to watch. Asbury really struggled in the beginning, but I really think that it's finally here. And there's a lot of successful businesses, a lot of residential, apartment buildings, condos that have been built and all filled up. And if you come here in the summertime, you see the hustle and bustle of a lot of people back on the boardwalk. It's really a great thing. Stephen, I know that your family has a rich history in Asbury.
We do. My grandfather on my mother's side, the Redeker family, actually ran the convention hall in the Monte Carlo pool through the 50s and 60s until the riots hit. I don't really remember that much, but I do, I've heard stories around the dinner table. They were the family of Asbury, so to speak, back then. Also, growing up here my whole life, I've seen what's happened through the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s. My family decided to develop some projects here in Asbury as it was starting to get rebuilt until that last recession hit.
So the transformation since then has been absolutely amazing. Nick, how do you...
It was transforming then, right? And it was on its way. And then the recession hit. And you really had real professionals turn Asbury Park around. And also the public officials really saw that this needed to be done properly. And that really catapulted Asbury to what it is today. It's amazing.
Yeah, for many years, there was an attempt to get better, and it just never seemed to get off the ground. And finally, as Stephen just alluded to, things took off and it was done the right way, and it's really fantastic down here. Nick, how do you find, how long have you been co-owner of?
Since 2016. So, it's funny, growing up the road in Belmar, I grew up in Belmar, I went to Belmar Elementary School, Manasquan High School. I remember coming to Palace of Amusements. I remember when the carousel was still here. I remember my parents had 2 separate Volkswagen Beetles stolen off of Lake Avenue while we were at the shooting gallery in Palace of Amusements. So it really has turned around. Even through the 80s and 90s, I remember, there were only a couple things open.
Remember the circuit?
Remember
the circuit? Yeah,
yeah.
that's
Well,
great.
Rob Ida, who's head of Ida Automotive, who's local to this area, has brought back the circuit. So if you go on Facebook and you look
really?
at the Asbury
Right.
Park circuit, there's a bunch of vintage cars and old cars and supercars that all get together and go out and ride the circuit now. So they're bringing the circuit back, which is cool. So it's a huge transformation, obviously. And I think what you have to really think about when you talk about Asbury is, iStorm, Madison Marquette, great. I think the efforts of the town and the council and folks to make sure that the west side is involved and that, we don't disenfranchise the people on the west side of town as well has been a challenge and a struggle, and something that I think Asbury is continuing to focus on. Is interesting to see as we move forward how that manifests itself.
I think it's funny you say that, because I believe that the next, let's say, episode is to get beyond into the west side.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately that's going to happen. I wasn't so sure, 5-10 years ago, but I do think that ultimately will happen.
You just can't create a huge project on the west side, right? You just got to clean it up.
Yeah.
You just got to create new values for the houses, try to get out some of the stuff that's there still, and refinish all these houses and restore them, which I think is slowly starting to be done. But
And in terms of the folks that are there too, it's tough because if they aren't the primary property owner, you end up pushing people out into Ocean Township or into other towns or pricing them out of the neighborhoods that they've traditionally grown up in. So that's the challenge, right? How do you create equitable development without over gentrification and disenfranchising the populace that has been there?
Right. And the other good thing is that there's some really fabulous restaurants in town, Brando's, Taka. I mean, the list goes on. Certainly in the summertime, if you try to get into a restaurant, very difficult. There's just,
what's been amazing to me, I have some friends, I live in Florida half the year now, and I have brought some friends up from Long Island or Florida to come visit. And when they step into Asbury and see the history, the Stone Pony, the Wonder Bar, they're just such an amazement. What they see, like the Stone Pony's epic, right? Bruce Springsteen's epic. They're walking to the Stone Pony, they're like over the top, and I'm like I live here my whole life, I take it for granted, right? So we don't even realize what an attraction Asbury has become, and it's going to keep getting better and better. It really is. It's amazing. And
So Nick, since 2016, I mean, you've seen a really strong transformation just from 16 to now.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it with other store owners too. Like you see, back in the day when things were first starting to come back, you'd see little funky mom and pops selling tchotchkes here and there. And now you really have to have kind of an anchor store, kind of a sustainable business model in order to really make it on Cookman here. And there's some cool stuff on some of the side streets, but really there were some like hobby stores here in this area, kind of like, they were people's hobbies, not a huge business. And those have kind of gotten pushed off. And once again, would love to see those things spring up more and have spaces for those type of stores develop too. But have seen larger projects happen, larger businesses come in. Still, I think to keep that local flavor, would love to see more small businesses flourish.
And Stephen, what's interesting is that the interesting part about the transformation, when you built the JCP&L building, do you remember what the units sold for?
300 to 500.
And today,
250 to 500,
today,
probably be 6 to 8.
At least.
Yeah.
I think that, so that's the other thing too. When I do remember when you first built that building, the prices actually dropped after you built the building for a while. And now, they're starting, there's just so much, action in town. People want to be here. So it's really helped the real estate market.
It's really interesting for like my demographic. I was a first-time home buyer in February 2020 is when I actually ended up closing on my home. Interesting timing, right? But I lived rented in Asbury Park 2016 onwards. And then when it comes time for me to look for a home, I'm like, holy cow, these prices are just outrageous.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why I'm in Neptune right now. But yeah, you look on the west side of Asbury is going to be the next spot, but even, other people who want to be kind of in the area, want to enjoy Asbury Park. I mean, Cookman, God, the bars are great, the restaurants are great, but I mean, people in my demographic, high student loans, but have jobs, want to move out of home. It's hard to live in Asbury, but that's why you get a lot of Neptune, people on the fringes of Asbury.
What do you think if you compare Asbury to Long Branch? You think Long Branch has helped Asbury, or has Asbury helped Long Branch?
Well, I think, I think it's two different type of demographic, actually. I think culturally, Asbury blows it away to Long Branch, but it's a great attraction there as well. I think the culture in Asbury, and what you've seen over the last 10 years, it's so diverse, and everybody's wanted to be here. I think Long Branch has a great, area. Pier Village is awesome. It's just different. So that's what I see.
Yeah,
I think it's a draw for both, but the Jersey Shore itself
Is really
there's nothing better in the summer than the Jersey Shore.
it's the
And
best.
right here.
It's the best. My wife and I talk about this all the time, but to live down here, you have the beaches, the ocean, everything in the Jersey Shore, and then you're only an hour away from Manhattan. It's just an unbelievable
Manhattan,
situation.
you got Philly, you got AC, you got the beach. Like I tell all my friends, oh, why do you love Jersey so much? And you could have it all in New Jersey, You want to do anything, and there's really just so little that you can't get here,
But then you always think Bruce Springsteen's just going to show up.
And to be
He
clear,
does show up.
Exactly.
yeah, he does.
Yeah,
and
he
to be
does.
clear, this is Central Jersey, and I
Yep.
think you can
Yes.
tell that because we're still Giants and Jets fans.
That is true.
And we haven't devolved into those heathens that are Eagles fans.
Yep.
That's how you know you're in South Jersey.
People ask me where I live. I go, where the Giants.
Where the
live.
it's
Where the
Giants.
Where we
This
root- where
is-
we
this is
still root
Giants
for the
territory.
Giants.
Yeah,
we are actually home to one of the biggest Raiders booster clubs at
I-
Bar
that's-
Anticipation in
That
Belmar.
is fine as
I'm a
long as
Raiders
it's,
guy.
as long as it's not an
Well,
Eagles
that's all
fan
driven
club.
by
I'm
Villa
good.
Piano.
Yeah, exactly. We got
That's
Phil.
why.
Sure, yeah.
But-
So Seashore Day Camp. We were
Yeah.
there.
So the other thing is that we're supposedly now, I hate to say this being in real estate, but we're supposedly entering somewhat of a recession. How do you think that's going to impact, the residential values, in the commercial, and I think Stephen could speak to this. I mean, I'm in an office and industrial. I don't really see any negative impact whatsoever in that aspect of real estate. However, with interest rates rising, what do you think that's going to do to the residential?
Listen, it's very easy for the stock market to plummet. It's very hard for real estate to plummet. It takes a while. So I don't think we really can determine what kind of recession we're going to have, if we're going to have one, and what the real impact interest rates are going to bear for a residential home and/or a commercial asset at this point. It's right now we're in a volatile up and down situation. Yeah, it's going to change. Will it change from 30 people bidding on a house, price war, going over list, to being at the price that it's being listed, and less offers? Probably. I think commercial assets, unless they're up for refinancing, are going to have some challenges refinancing the projects. But I think it's all about the consumer here in Asbury, right? I think the consumer likes to spend. And if their stock portfolios are not that big, as long as they have the jobs and they're getting better wages, they're going to spend. So I think this recession, and I study it because I'm in the world of capital markets economics, I think that it's still time will tell. But the biggest thing that will save us is we're not a debt-ridden environment. There's liquidity out in the market. I don't want to get so
And don't get so technical.
so technical. I think time will tell, but I do think being where we are, an hour outside the city, both Philly and New York, and the cities are really suffering, I think we're going to benefit in this area tremendously.
Yeah, I think there's a ton of people moving, especially after COVID, just cooped up in tiny little, apartments for so long. I mean, I have friends in New York who, let me get out of here, get some space, get some breathing room, which I think really contributes a lot to the boom we see here.
So do you think if we are in somewhat of a slight recession, do you think people will opt to maybe move to like a downtown area like Asbury before they go buy a house because they can spend less money? Or do you think that would help the suburban housing market and people might opt to try and get a house instead of being downtown?
I still think there's a ton of people on the fence that haven't been able to buy. So prices can stabilize and maybe creep down a little bit. I still think there's a plethora of people looking to either buy or even rent. So I think this area, I think no one's safe from a recession. I think we're a little isolated because of our geographics and our demographics. I just think we are. But there are so many factors to this recession: geopolitical, war, interest rate environment. job. But look at our jobs. No one can hire. Can't find people. So
Not only that, though, I think the pandemic also created an age of people being able to disconnect from the office. So I have a buddy who just bought in Marlboro, who works for Google, doesn't have to go back to the office. Why live in Hoboken? Why live in New York City when you can work from a nice house in Marlboro and not have to worry about that?
this is the biggest recession, if we have a recession, change of how the world's going to work ever in our time. So we're going to have to, time will tell. Will there be a recession? I think there's going to be some pain, but it also depends who it is. But I think Asbury and Monmouth County and the Jersey Shore, being where we are, I think we can, sustain and not get crushed.
And I think the impact, if there is a recession, more people will be able to afford the condos in an Asbury area as opposed to going out and buying a single-family home because it's going to be more expensive.
And listen, I think the travel, people are going to drive to Asbury. They're not going to fly to Florida, right? They're going to come to Asbury.
Well, that's what when we're talking about Asbury this summer, we're talking about Belmar this summer, and a lot of my customers are real estate guys, and they're saying, hey, listen, you're going to see a lot of people this summer.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are going to say, hey, you know what, we're going to drive from Philly to Asbury, from New York to Asbury, from wherever to Belmar, right? And spend a weekend, spend 2 weeks, spend 3 weeks maybe, because it's just cheaper than going on a huge vacation. Or
I mean, even last weekend, like pre-Memorial Day, absolute mob out here, craziness in Pier Village. But yeah, I mean, that's just the beginning.
Yeah.
I think the impact of COVID, certainly they're all charged up. They want to be out of the house. So I think that's going to be a big positive effect.
Unless you could bring your car here, park it, and you don't have to drive anymore the rest of the week or however long you're staying here. Everything's right here. So I think that's, saving on gas, coming to the dinners here. So I think,
You do have to have deep pockets to park here, too. There's paid parking keeps creeping street to street to street.
It does.
But at least you can park, though.
At least you can find a spot.
Going back, talking to my grandparents when they ran part of Asbury Park, there was no parking anywhere. People just found a way to park.
Yeah.
So people will pay for the parking.
Yeah.
They'll just pay for it.
So we're at Asbury Park Cigar and Tobacco. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be back in a couple minutes.
In 1993, John Gwaltney dubbed himself Senor Juan and founded Senor Juan Cigars. John prided himself on offering up equal helpings of quick wit, hot coffee, and fine premium cigars in no particular order. His zeal for storytelling and creating a great atmosphere to enjoy a cigar drew in fans and customers. Today, we are proud to build upon the foundations of what John created in order to make your cigar smoking experience even better. The best selection of premium cigar brands, the finest accessories, and Senor Juan's famous hand-rolled cigars, all while making sure we never lose sight of keeping the shop a friendly, relaxing spot to enjoy a smoke. In this new day and age of online meetings and presentations, you need the best team at the ready. Whether broadcasting your Zoom meetings to Facebook Live or live streaming a fundraiser event, Surreal Streaming Services, with over 10 years of experience, can add confidence to your next live stream event. Call or text 646-498-8888 or visit sur-real.com. MRD Productions is a full-service digital media company dedicated to creating and producing content with purpose. If you or your company are looking to create a video or commercial that pops, produce a show or podcast of your own, call 718-216-6403 or email info@mrdproductionsllc.com. At MRD Productions, we tell stories.
We're back to Shades of Havana. I'm your host, David Zimmel. We're at Asbury Park Cigar and Tobacco, downtown Asbury Park. We alluded to the house that Bruce Springsteen built.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Want to talk about that?
Growing up down here in Asbury, had a ton of Bruce encounters. He is actually, the legend of all time. If you live down here, everybody that I know outside here says, "Have you ever met Bruce? Have you ever talked to Bruce?" And unfortunately, I've had many times to hang out with him. My kids went to private school with his kids, and every year he would have a concert at the Stone Pony just for about 200 people. We were doing shots, hanging out with him. that was very cool. My son played lacrosse with his son, and greatest story ever. We're watching the game, and one of his kids scored from a pass from my son, and all of a sudden Bruce and Patty start like creating a song about the play, and I'm standing right there on the fence with them. I go, I don't think this will ever happen with anybody in their life.
Right.
So Bruce, being in Asbury, walking into the restaurant when you're sitting there, he's like,
yeah, I think
it's great.
The amazing thing about Bruce is that, as famous as he is, he's very approachable. You see, I worked out at the gym that he worked out of many years ago, the Here Institute, and he would come into the gym and nobody would bother him. He would come in with his old gray sweats, and just everyone just let him do his thing, and because of that, he was very approachable. So the fact that he was as famous as he is, and that you can see him walking on the street, you don't see people running up to him and tapping on the shoulder, whereby you might see that with other celebrities. It's a really cool thing. One funny story, my brother, who works out at the same gym, Bruce one day came to the concession to get a protein shake, and he didn't have any money. And he's fiddling around, and he said, "Oh, I left my money." And my brother was down at the other end of the counter and said, "I'll take care of it, that's on me." So Bruce said, "Thanks." So, he's a very approachable guy.
Well, there's a rich musical history in Asbury Park, outside of Bruce, too. Even before Bruce, like Duke Ellington has played on the West Side. Some really crazy acts, Motown acts have played here. And then I know Convention Hall has hosted some huge concerts as well.
I mean, my father-in-law was with a famous Jersey Shore band called Salvation, way back. I don't know if anybody remembers that.
You're going back.
Going way back. And they were the premier Jersey Shore band back in the day. And they would show up to the Stone Pony. And at that time, Springsteen was a bartender. This is a story I've heard. He was a bartender, and my father-in-law was the drummer, and he was the leader of the band. And they walk in, and his name was Arnett, and Bruce said, "Hey, Arnett, do you need anything?" He goes, "Hey, kid, get me a beer." 40 years later, Springsteen's the biggest rock legend of all time. So there's a lot of great stories, and being here, it's just
it's great with the Stone Pony, as you said, as famous as it is. He still stops in. You never know when he's going to come in. It's really exciting. I mean, we actually have several, Bon Jovi, who's not an Asbury guy, but we have a lot of top-notch rock bands that emanate from New Jersey.
It's interesting the point you make earlier about we take it for granted. My fiance is from Michigan, and her mom is a big Bruce fan, and when her family comes down, they're like, "Oh, the Stone Pony and this and that." I'm like, "Oh, well, yeah, it's just a Stone Pony, for her Christmas gift a few years ago, I got her this whole Bruce Springsteen set, and every time she comes, I'm like, "We're gonna find Bruce. I'll show you his old house, whatever." And it's such a big attraction to me. I'm just I was born and raised in Central New Jersey. It's not a big deal, but no, it is a big deal apparently.
Yeah, and I heard a great Bruce story when he backed up Chuck Berry. Chuck Berry would do this thing where he would fly in. You'd have to have his money in a briefcase. He'd rent a Cadillac at the airport, drive to the venue, you'd give him the money. He'd only have his guitar with him. He'd get on stage, he'd plug in, and you had to provide the backing band for him. I heard that Springsteen was his backing band once, and he goes, hey, what's happening, Chuck? What music we're gonna play tonight? And Chuck Berry just turns to him and says, "Chuck Berry music," and starts playing. starts playing, and you had to have a backing band that knew all the Chuck Berry tunes, and he would just do that. Then he'd take his money, take his one guitar, get back in the Cadillac, and drive to the airport.
That's great.
Yeah.
So on a more serious note, we recently had this school shooting, actually yesterday, in Texas. It's just so hard for me to wrap my hands around with, this just continues to happen all the time. And I was listening to different people speak on the TV. Some people are talking about gun control. Other people are talking about mental health. What's the real problem here? They're blaming COVID. I don't really know that COVID's really been the main cause. I'm not sure I buy into that. But what do you guys think about, the school shootings and what the reason is that this is happening so often? I think I read this morning or saw on TV that the school shootings is up like 60 more than there were the last, like 2 years ago.
Well, I think the biggest challenge there, and that's part of your wording, whether intentional or not, the reason, right? I feel like we want to act like, oh, we have to pin it down. It's a mental health issue. It's a gun issue. It's a COVID issue. When realistic, it's way more complicated than that, right? Like, it's everything. This is all of it baked into our society, right? You can't just say, oh, increase mental health services and then shootings go down. You can't just say regulate the guns better and the shootings go down. No, there's no one action here, especially, right? There's like life as it is, and there's life as it should be, and there's life as we want it, right? There's no one action. There's no one practical action that we can take to address this all in one fell swoop. This is a project with many facets, many aspects to it that need to be taken on at once.
Yeah, I think it's all of it. I mean, it's a blend of all of it. I mean, guns should not be easily accessible. Mental health, is getting worse and worse. Everybody sees too much information. I think flow of information really, really kills people, thought process. And then you have kids that either get bullied or are secluded, that see this on Facebook or see this on Instagram or see it on the news, and they snap.
Yeah, I'm a big believer that as good as the computer is, the fact that people see our TV, the news, is so much more out there with so much more information. People sit back and see this stuff, and it gives them ideas.
We dramatize it.
Right.
We put it on the news. It's on every news station. It's every news feed on the internet, every alert you get, and then it just, certain people snap, and once they snap, they're going to do it.
I mean,
Like,
even this last shooting, there's all this Instagram activity of this kid live streaming himself as he fights with his mom. Like, I feel like being able to put everything out there, it's just overwhelming. I don't think any human being is naturally suited to deal with that much just information, stimulation. Like, you can't possibly process that all at once.
On the Buffalo shooting, the guy live streamed that on Twitch.
Right.
Yeah. You can't pin it down. I mean, you think back to when you were a kid. Did you tease people? Did you get teased? Yeah. How did you deal with it? I don't know. We drove BMX bikes off of ramps.
Remember those days.
We're outside playing with Tonka trucks that weighed 73 pounds. Right. I don't know what the difference is. I mean, I know we played outside a lot, and I know like 15 of us played outside.
But today you won't play outside; it's too dangerous.
And we drove and we rode our bikes everywhere. But parents always seem to know everything, and everybody else in the neighborhood knew your parents. And I couldn't get away with anything in Belmar.
Well, I was at a conference yesterday, and we were talking about this a little bit. And I think the interesting thing is, when I grew up, and I think I'm the oldest one on this panel, unfortunately. Probably.
It looks that way.
No, when I grew up, most mothers were home. They did not work. Most. Okay, there were mothers that did work, but for the most part, when I came home from school, there was a parent there, and I was monitored. Today, most kids come home and there's no parent. So they have the freedom of either going on the computer or going out and doing something they shouldn't be doing. And that's fundamentally a problem that I don't think we're going to be able to solve because both parents have to work.
I think these shootings are horrible, but the mental health that is rampant through this country, from the 90-year-old to a young adult, is crazy. I mean, I recently have been suffering a little bit with anxiety that I never had in my life. Like, why? I got a great life. I got great, things. Nothing's perfect.
Your golf game's suffering.
Well, I'm back home now, so
that's the reason my mental health suffers.
Yeah, so I think this mental health, and we don't have a grip on it as a country to help. It's like you get lost if you need help. It's really serious, and I don't even know how you fix it, to be honest.
I mean, there again, right? Like several steps. First is acknowledgement, and I think we have gotten there, right? Like I saw a Facebook comment that after the shooting, like, oh, no one's talking about mental health. No, we are talking about mental health. It's just, are we acting on mental health?
Talk's cheap.
And I think, right, everything comes down to what are our actual priorities, right? Paying lip service to something costs nothing, no action, whatever. But will we actually invest in it, right? We complain about our high taxes all the time. Everyone's like, more this, more that, more that. All this stuff costs money. It's a matter of what's our priority. Is it mental health? Is it education? Both. The answer to both is no. What is it, and how can we reallocate and make sure we are investing in
and the
these
last
things?
few shootings were 18, 19-year-olds.
Yeah.
Right? After they turn 18, they're on their own. Yeah. I think that needs to be looked at. I think they're too young to have to, and they have this ability to go buy a gun or kill people.
Well, Nick, I know, just before you say something, I just want to say that one thing that was alarming to me that I saw today, that in Texas, you can't drink until you're 21, but you can buy a gun when you're 18. It's kind of crazy.
Well, how old do you have to be in the state of New Jersey to buy a cigar? Do you know that?
21 now.
21?
Yeah.
21. So you can buy a gun, but you can't buy a cigar.
Why'd you let me smoke a cigar?
What's that? I don't know. I want to see some ID, please, sir. But I think it's super crazy that, nobody's gonna run into a schoolyard and burn everybody with a cigar. But you can go and buy a gun.
I'm not a gun control nut by any means. I like shoot and trap, whatever. I just don't see a good, valid reason for 18-year-olds to be able to buy guns.
Or even the ability to go buy the gun. There should be more of a background check and waiting time than this guy bought a gun in 1 week.
Yep.
I mean, he
Sad.
And there's
It's just sad.
documented issues.
It's crazy.
It's sad,
these-
and it has to
a lot
be
of
fixed.
Yeah,
these
so this is too big a topic to tackle in one day, but it is a huge problem. So we're here at Asbury Park Cigar and Tobacco. We're Nick Foster, co-owner, Steve Schultz, and Pranoy Mohapatra. I really appreciate you guys joining the panel today. I think we had some great conversation. We are thrilled to be back with another episode of Shades of Havana, and we look forward to seeing you soon. And I just want to know what you're smoking today.
Shades of Havana with your host, David Zimmel, and special guest host, Nick Foster, along with our guests, Pranoy Mohapatra and Steve Schultz. Directed by Rod Weber. Created by Michael R. Doyle. Producers David Zimmel and Erwin Sternberg. Executive producers Michael R. Doyle, Sean M. Sternberg, and Rod Weber. Co-producers Steve Zimke and John P. Doyle. Camera Mark Manass and Sean Duenas. Sound and live mix Rod Weber. Editor Steve Zimke. And special thanks to Nick Foster for hosting us at Asbury Park Cigar and Tobacco Company in Asbury Park, New Jersey. Shades of Havana was brought to you by Senor Juan Cigars. Visit SenorJuanCigars.com for subscriptions and suggestions for your next great cigar. Sir Real, sir-real.com for all your streaming service solutions. Or call 646-498-8888. Again, 646-498-8888. Our sponsors' websites and phone numbers are also provided in the show notes. When you visit our sponsors, you're helping them and helping our show. And if you enjoy Shades of Havana, we hope you tell your friends and give us a great rating wherever you get your podcasts. All opinions expressed by the Shades of Havana participants are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Shades of Havana, Inc., a subsidiary of MRD Productions, LLC. Shades of Havana is an MRD production.